We are just getting ready to go live. We've got Instagram coming on board, and we'll be getting started in just a minute. I would love it if those of you who are with me on the webinar would actually just let me know who you are and where you're from. It's nice to know who's with us. And if you're with me on Facebook, I would love that as well. If you would take a moment and just let me know who you are and where you're from so that I can be interactive with you. That would be amazing. Hi, Kate Trussell. It's good to see you on Instagram. Thanks for joining us. I hope you'll stay with us for the duration. And we've got Susan and Donna and Tamara and Hannah's with us on the webinar. So it's good to have you with us as well. We've got Facebook coming on live as well. So this is going to be a lot of fun. We've got Tamara from Ontario, and it's Tamara rhymes with camera. Thank you. There's so many ways to pronounce that particular set of letters that it can be a challenge. So thank you, Tamara. I appreciate that. We've got Kate from Worcestershire. Did I say it? Worcestershire in the UK? I think I said that right. Good to have you with us. We've got Cacnus also joining us on Instagram, so it's great to have you. We are just ready to get going here, and we've been joined by Daniela on Facebook as well. So good to see you all, and we've got Dabubad with us on Instagram too. Thanks for being there. We are just going to hit that button, and I'm going to ask you to excuse me, to avoid using, if you're with me on the webinar, please use the chat box rather than the Q&A. I keep the chat box open, but I don't keep the Q&A box open. So if you're going through Q&A, I'm going to miss your comments. And My Health Love Style is with us on Instagram. Thank you so much. All right, let's get rolling. Sound good? Sound good? Welcome and hello. I'm just going to pop this camera around for just a second. Did I do that right? There we go. Hi. Hi, Instagram. It's good to see you. For those of you who are with me on the webinar on Facebook, hello, and we're going to open up the camera. And I've developed a tickle in my throat, which is not a great thing when you're going to be talking for the next 45 minutes. So pardon me while I moisten my throat. All righty. So for those of you who are new to me, Sean, it's great to have you with us on the webinar. Thank you for being there. My name is Judith Cobb. I'm a master herbalist, natural nutrition clinical practitioner, and certified iridologist, as well as a certified comprehensive iridology instructor. I have been in the holistic wellness industry now for 4 decades plus, just over 4 decades. I've been teaching iridology for that length of time, but I've changed in those years. About 3 decades ago, I jumped ship from my original trainings in iridology and became a constitutional iridologist. And since then, I have continued to work with this and to build it and to promote it and to teach it. And I love, love, love teaching iridology and herbology and nutrition and everything that gets rolled in with it in a holistic health practice. I especially focus on teaching holistic practitioners. That is where my real passion is when it comes to iridology. So thank you so much for being with me. We're going to look today at the idea that there are a lot of misconceptions out there about iridology, and they're being perpetrated by people who are stuck where I was 30 to 40 years ago. They're using outdated information, outdated methodologies. And because of that, it's giving iridology a bad name. And it's very, very confusing for a lot of people who are looking into iridology. So where we're going to focus our learning today is on some constitutional concepts about how eyes change, particularly in response to traumas and surgeries. All right. So we are going to be looking at this at a fairly detailed level. And we've had more people join us on the webinar. Thank you so much for being there. I think I'm Shanae. Is that how you pronounce your name on the webinar? Thanks for being there. And so as we do this, again, I've got the chat box open for those who are on the webinar, and I'm watching comments on Instagram as well as comments in the Facebook group. And we're broadcasting to a couple of different places in Facebook, so I will try to catch everything that's there. Hello, Colleen. Thank you for joining us on Instagram. Let's start. We're going to pop this camera around for our Instagram people. There we go. Let's start with this owl story. Now, how many of you have heard the owl story? If you've heard the owl story, give me a wave if you're on Instagram, or give me a 1 if you're with me on Facebook or on the webinar. Thank you. Yeah, a lot of you have heard the owl story, right? So let's talk about the owl story. This is the story of Ignaz von Petzle, who as a young 11-year-old boy, and that's the only fact that seems to be the same in all the versions of the story. So from there, it's going to get interesting. He either caught, trapped, or found a bird of prey that was either a hawk or an owl. And that bird, the owl either broke a leg or a wing in the process of being trapped, or he found this bird and it was injured and caught it. Okay, so there's so many variations in there. We're not quite sure which one is right. Again, he was an 11-year-old boy, right? And so this, we don't know where it goes from there, but the story goes that he saw a black line in the bottom of the owl's eye, or the bird's eye, and as the bird healed, the black line disappeared. Now, here's the problem we've got with that story. You would think that after all of these decades, with all of the bird sanctuaries and the places where injured birds are taken to be healed and to be released out into the wild again, that someone somewhere, a veterinarian, a technician, somebody would have seen the same thing happen in their bird's eyes somewhere along the way. But no one has ever reported this. It has not been replicated in another bird. And so how much stock can we put in this actually? Another thing to consider is that a bird's eye is very different from a human eye in its surface structure. And so even if it did happen in the bird, it likely would not happen in a human eye. So we have to take that story and put it aside as folklore. And every current up-to-date constitutional iridologist, including Bernard Jensen's daughter-in-law, agrees that that story should be put aside. All right, so let's look at an actual human case. We're actually going to look at 4 instances of major traumas. In some of these, I've got before pictures, and some of them I've got after pictures as well. Okay, these are my eyes from March 2017. And where I really want you to be focusing your attention is right over here. This is a left iris. This, if we're using the Ellentart-Jensen iris map, is where the arm shows up. This is the arm zone. I want you to pay really close attention to this. You'll notice I've also noted my camera settings for this image. And I know from what the lights look like, which lighting setup I was using. So we've got what's going on right here. All right, so you're going to see that there's some wavy lines, there's some very white lines, there's a tiny bit of not really shading in here, but it's not as bright in between these spaces. We've got this pigment here. We see all the detail in this, okay? Were we all on the same page that we've got that detail? Because about 2 years later, just about exactly 2 years later, on the 13th of March, 2019, I slipped on some ice outside. It was dark, early morning. I was racing to get to public transit to get downtown for a workshop. I slipped on the ice and I broke my wrist. This is what my wrist looked like as I was in the waiting room at the hospital. My wrist is not normally deformed like that. Needless to say, I did not make it to the workshop. This is the X-ray. It was actually broken in 2 places. This is one break. And the other break is, just let me think of where we're at here. The other break is over here, I believe, or it might be here. I don't know, but there's 2 breaks in here. And I know there's 2 breaks. I'm going to show you how I know there's 2 breaks. This is my arm after surgery because neither of the breaks could be externally stabilized or externally reduced. So we did a double surgery, 1 anesthetic in surgery for 3 hours as they opened my arm up in 2 places to install some hardware, which we will get to in just a moment. This is me like 2 days after trying to rest in bed and eat a little bit of yogurt because boy, I don't like general anesthetic. And so grateful for it that I didn't have to be awake during the surgery, but I do not like the 2 or 3 days afterwards. On March 19th, so this is 2 days after, as nauseous as I was home from the hospital. I had the presence of mind to do eye photos. Okay, get a life, right? Who, when they're coming out of surgery and feel like they've been hit by a Mack truck, who thinks, I need to get eye photos? I do. And you're absolutely allowed to laugh at that silly focus. But look at what we've got here. We've got the same wavy lines, slightly wavier because the pupil is a little bit bigger. We've got the same white lines beside it. We've got the same brown pigment. We've got nothing has changed. Wouldn't you think that after a double surgery that has gifted me with semi-bionic arms, I now have 2 metal plates in my wrist, total of 12 screws. They show up on every x-ray. I do not set off metal detectors at the airport, thank goodness. But this is what my wrist looks like. Wouldn't you think that this should show up in my eyes somehow, some way? So this x-ray is from 2 weeks post-surgery when I had to go back to the cast clinic. They took off the surgical cast, put on a regular cast, and do these x-rays, right? So there we go. Healing nicely according to the doctor. Here's another view. You can see again, count all the screws and all the screw holes in there. Oh my goodness, the bionic arm. This is what my arm looks like. There's the 1 incision that is actually right here for those of you who are on Facebook and on the webinar. And here is the other incision, which is right along the side of my arm down here. And again, for those of you on Instagram, I'm sorry I didn't flip that around for you, but that is what I looked like 2 weeks post-surgery. So I thought, well, maybe give it another week or so, or 2 or 3 weeks, maybe something will show up. So I redid the eye photos and we've got nothing different. Everything is exactly the same. So I had 2 bone breaks, a double surgery, 2 metal plates inserted, and there's not a speck of change in my left eye. Not a speck, not a speck. So if we look at those images side by side and we look at those areas, that area that reflects that arm, you will see that there is no change. No change. So for my body, a break did not show up in the eye whatsoever. Neither did the surgery. Well, as if that wasn't enough, 9 weeks after that, I fell down some stairs at my son's house and I broke the olecranon off my, I don't even know what the rest of the bone is called, but you can see you're not supposed to have a gap like this between your elbow and the arm bone. Snapped it right off. My grandchildren were there. I was a very good grandmother. I did not say anything that I should not have said. All I did was laid on the floor and said, oh, 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 repeatedly while I held my arm. They grabbed me an ice pack. And of course, it was Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day. I was dressed in really nice clothes. And my first concern was, honey, you have to take me home and help me get changed because I don't want to wear these clothes to the hospital because they might cut them off and I don't want that to happen. So we did that. We came home and managed to get me changed. This is me waiting in the emergency room at the hospital. My elbow is not usually shaped like that. Me in a slab cast. And what I learned this time around was nursing scrubs are the absolute best thing if you're in an arm cast, because they're slightly stretchy and they're loose enough to actually get your arm through a sleeve. And they got lots of pockets on them for carrying things that you can't carry with your wrecked arm. So there we go. That's just a little side tip that I hope you don't ever need. So on May 27th, so this is a couple weeks later, not quite as on the ball, we look at that arm again. This is that arm zone again. And there's still no change. That elbow again required surgery. We're going to look at some things here. There's my wrist. They x-rayed the wrist to make sure that everything held, and it did. And this is what my elbow looks like now. Pins and wires to pull that bone together to hold it in place. And it has healed beautifully. And I got to tell you, my hat's off to my physiotherapist as well. Between the wrist and the elbow, he and I got to be very good friends. And he's helped me regain about 97% of my mobility, my range of motion, all of that in the wrist and the elbow. And I am so grateful to him for that. So good to see you joining us on Instagram. John Jensen, Hip Hop, Amanda, and Nisi. Nice to see you. Good. Thank you for being there. So let's look at the eye again a few months later. Do we see any difference in this eye? No, not a speck. Not a speck. The fibers are the same. Any color variation you're seeing has to do with, by this time, I'm afraid I was not a great scientist. I did not mark down my camera settings and things like that. So I didn't replicate that 100% because we're really looking at fiber structure. What I'm proving here is you would think that 3 breaks, 3 surgeries, 3 metal implants in an arm within a space really of 9 weeks would show something in an iris, wouldn't you? But it doesn't. Surgeries don't show in an iris. My arm is totally healed and, it feels great. And I'm just so grateful that we have modern medicine, because I'm pretty sure I don't know a herbalist who could have fixed those things. Certainly once the surgery was done, I launched into the supplements and really worked on that. All right, here is one way eyes do change, but this is not an iris. I want you to focus on this blood vessel down here. I wish I had a before of this one. This is called a trauma fork. And this is the eye of a 17-year-old girl who was a highly competitive Scottish or Highland dancer, not Highland, sorry. The river dance style. The river dance style of dancing, right? Highly competitive. She has done national competitions and you have to earn your way to get up there. So she was really competitive. When she was in grade 12, for those of you who are in the States, that's the 12th grade, some person in her class, I'm not going to use the adjectives I would like to use, thought it would be hilarious to hit her on the head with a hardcover version of one of the really thick Harry Potter books. He hit her so hard, he gave her a 2nd to 3rd degree concussion. She nearly lost the school year because of it. This is the kind of an indicator that pops up in the sclera when there has been a significant trauma. Now, fortunately, her mom is smart, got her into the concussion clinic. They did all the right things. It did take her about 4 months to recover. for doing her grade 12 exams. She had to have readers. She had to have people who would read the questions and read them 3 or 4 times and help explain them. And then she could come up with the answers. But she really, really struggled until she was fully healed. Since then, she's gone on to post-secondary school. She's doing very well. But this is something that we do see in some kinds of trauma, not in every trauma. Here's another trauma fork showing that this person's also had some kind of a head trauma. And again, when the trauma has completely healed, this kind of a blood vessel will subside, but it probably will not ever completely go away. All right, so that's an important thing to remember. It's going to be there as a reminder. All right, let's look at another surgery, and that is an abdominal surgery. This is a young man who was 24 when this happened. And this is his right iris. When we look at this, to look at anything abdominal, I mean, we look for anything irregular, right? And when we're looking abdominal, it could be in the right eye. It could be anything over here on the lower lateral side of the iris. That would be the most common place to see it. He developed a hernia, and it was quite sudden and quite bad. And so we managed to find a surgeon in another city who could take him in fairly quickly. He got the surgery, and after he had the surgery, we reshot his eyes. And again, every marking, look at first off the pupil size here. Look at the pupil size, because the pupil size changes how the fibers appear. When the pupil is larger, these fibers in the rest of the eye are going to appear wavier. When the pupil is smaller, these fibers are going to appear straighter. And as we see this, that is what accounts for what appears to be some differences in the iris, but we don't see anything when he had the hernia or after the repair that actually shows like a black line or the healing lines that we've been told we would see. These are the images of a fellow who is 39 years old. He was diagnosed in 2020 with colon cancer. So as we look at this, these are images 3 years prior to the diagnosis. His cancer was in the descending bowel, very close to the sigmoid and the rectum. And so very, very low down. And when we look in here, see, I was taught that if there was a cancer in the eye, we would see black. And I do not see anything in here that is any different from anything else in his eye that would make me think black. Now, I'm just going to beg a moment here because Instagram has kicked us off, and I just need to reestablish that. Or better yet, I'm just going to do a quick post here and pop that up. Okay, it's not doing this. Changes. Just going to pop that up really quick. It's not letting me. I will have to post this to them separately later. My apologies for that. So we look down here 3 years ago, nothing, nada. We look down here 2 years ago, nothing, nada. Okay. And then we look 6 weeks post-surgery. There's nothing. There's nothing in here that suggests that we have any kind of a trauma going on. Okay, so this is really important for us to remember. So what we've got here is we've got, again, 6 weeks post-surgery. These pictures were taken the same day with the same camera, but with a different lighting setup. And I wanted to show you here the difference that lighting makes as well in the color of the eye, the color of the sclera, everything. It really does. And so it makes a huge difference. So it's important to recognize that difference, that some people will say, I did a cleanse and my eyes have changed. But if you look carefully, you're going to see that it's actually the technology that changed, not the eye. All right. So what does that tell us? It tells us that trauma, like broken bones or surgeries, does not show up in the irides. Does not show up at all. All right, so I'm going to pop in here and take just a moment with that. If you found that interesting, let me know. Give me, okay, so I'm just looking here. Okay, great. I would love it if you would let me know in the comments if you thought that was informative and interesting. Just give me a big fat yes in the comments if you thought that was informative and interesting. Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much. Wonderful. The next session of the dynamic iridology, and Daniela has a question. So Daniela, just go ahead and type your question in. The next session of the Dynamic Iridology Assessment System for Holistic Practitioners is starting on April 21st. And for that, I'm not going to go into huge detail here. I'm just going to give you a bit of information about it. With that program, it provides all of the curriculum you need to prepare to take the certification exam with the International Iridology Practitioners Association. The course again is called Dynamic Iridology Assessment System for Holistic Health Practitioners, but that is such a mouthful, right? It is the only live online fully mentored course for nutritionists, herbalists, and naturopaths who want to streamline their clinical work without sacrificing client care, so they can stop working unpaid overtime to develop client programs, so they can stop overwhelming their clients with undoable programs, and so they can create programs that will increase client compliance, success, and long-term retention. There are a lot of iridology programs out there that will teach you iris markers. I don't know of any programs out there that teach you how to integrate what you're seeing with what you already know about nutrition or herbology. So the goal of this is to teach you constitutional iridology and how to use it confidently so that you can easily integrate what you already know about nutrition or herbology or whatever modalities you have to confidently create doable client programs right in your paid client sessions. There is an info webinar coming up on Monday at 5 p.m. And I'm going to post the registration link for that in the chat box. So if you want to join me for that, it'll be about an hour and 3/4 to 2 hours long. It will give you all the details about the program, what's included, how much mentoring there is, and there is a truckload of mentoring for you, how much extra support there is even after the course is finished. So I encourage you and invite you to join me for this webinar. So question, Daniela says, my eyes used to be solid brown when I was born and until I was about 26, then changed totally to hazel with browny orange around the pupil and the rest is darker green. Totally strange. How could this happen though? Oh, Daniela, your eye color is inherent. And what that means is that it can be, as we get older, sometimes pigment fades. Sometimes we acquire more pigment. So yeah, totally doable. The thing that we see is not accurate is when people have one color of eye and then they say, you know, I did this cleanse, I've been a raw food, vegan, you know, kind of person for the last 5 years and look at the eye color. That doesn't happen. When we look at those images and we compare them and compare the tech that was used. It's always the tech that has changed. I've never seen a properly controlled set of before and after photos for someone who is cleansed. But we do see that just as our hair color is programmed to change, like my hair did not have this much gray in it 10 years ago, I promise you, right? Just as our skin tones and colors can change, the amount of wrinkles we've got increases with time, so can our eye color shift because of time. Okay, just you're genetically programmed that your eye color would shift, and that's what likely happened there. Okay. All righty. Any questions about anything we've talked about today? Give you just a second in case there are more questions. And yeah, go ahead and use that link and get registered for the webinar Monday. If you're interested in learning more, if you're really interested in learning iridology rather than these little tiny free snippets that I run, because you're never going to learn enough iridology from these free bits to actually know how to do it well. You just simply won't. It's not possible. And so I encourage you, join me Monday and we will see you then. Take good care and have a great weekend. Bye for now.